The diner was too quiet that morning, the kind of silence that carried weight. It wasn't peace, it was waiting. The kind of stillness that made every small sound echo like a secret, the scrape of a spoon, the hiss of coffee, the faint hum of the ceiling fan fighting the summer heat. Through the big glass windows, sunlight spilled across the checkered floor, casting gold over cracked leather booths and gleaming chrome edges. A half-eaten pie sat lonely under a glass dome by the counter. Outside, the wind rustled a faded American flag, and a single black motorcycle rumbled away in the distance. In the corner booth sat Walter Branson, an 81-year-old war veteran who came every morning at exactly 8:15. To most, he was just that old man with the newspaper, but there was something about him, his posture straight despite the years, his gaze calm but unreadable, that hinted at a history deeper than wrinkles could tell. This morning, though, something was different. A storm was brewing in that diner, not outside, but inside, a collision between youth's arrogance and age's quiet strength. And when it hit, when a single cruel act shattered that fragile calm, the room would learn that respect isn't demanded by power, it's earned by character. They would also learn that even the quietest man can have a story fierce enough to silence a room, and that blood, once broken, can still find its way back home, because on that still morning, one act of cruelty would awaken something far greater. The redemption of a family long divided, and the roar of justice that would echo far beyond the diner's glass walls. Walter Branson sat alone, his calloused fingers curled around a chipped coffee mug. The coffee was bitter, but he liked it that way. Life had taught him to take things as they came, strong, real, unfiltered. He had fought in Korea, lost friends in jungles and snow, buried a wife who had once promised him forever, and raised a son who had left too soon. Now, all he had was this diner, its cracked linoleum floor, its smell of bacon grease, and the comfort of routine. The waitress, Lucy, brought him his usual, black coffee and 2 eggs. Over easy. Morning, Mr. Branson, she said with her kind, tired smile. Morning, Lucy. You're too good to me, he replied softly. At the far end of the diner, 2 young men argued with Lucy's husband about a bill. One of them, tall and heavy-set, had the kind of swagger that came from never being told no. He slammed his fist on the counter. I'm not paying for something I didn't order, he shouted. The other customers went silent. Walter turned his head slightly, not to intervene, just to observe. His gray eyes were steady, calm, but the thug noticed. What the hell are you looking at, old man? The young man barked. Walter said nothing. He simply went back to his coffee. That silence, dignified, unshaken, only infuriated the man more. I said, what are you looking at? Before anyone could move, the man stormed over and struck Walter across the face. The sound echoed through the diner like a whip crack. Lucy screamed. Coffee spilled. Walter's head turned with the blow, but he didn't fall. His cheek burned, a crimson handprint forming against his pale skin. Slowly, he raised his hand to his face, not in fear, but disbelief. Not at the pain, but at what the world had become. The room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Lucy's husband finally yelled, get out of here, now, but the thug only laughed. What's he gonna do? He's old enough to be my granddad. Walter didn't respond. He didn't need to. The dignity in his silence said more than words ever could. But beneath that quiet, something deep inside him stirred, a memory, an ache, a long-forgotten strength. The thug finally walked out, his laughter fading into the distance. The diner exhaled as if it had been holding its breath. Lucy ran over with a towel. Oh, Mr. Branson, I'm so sorry. He shook his head gently. It's all right, Lucy. Some men never learn manners. He smiled faintly, but his eyes betrayed a sadness far heavier than the bruise forming on his face. An hour passed. The diner emptied. Walter sat still, nursing his coffee. His reflection stared back at him in the window, a lonely old man who once fought for respect in a world that seemed to have forgotten what the word meant. Then, the bell above the door jingled, the sound of boots echoed across the floor. 1 pair. Then another. Then 10 more. The air shifted, thicker, heavier. The customers who remained turned toward the entrance. A group of men had entered, bikers, their leather vests emblazoned with the unmistakable insignia, Hell's Angels. At their center walked a tall man with a steel-gray beard, his eyes cold but sharp. His name was Thomas Branson. Walter's son. The two hadn't spoken in nearly 15 years. Too many arguments, too many misunderstandings. Thomas had gone his own way, rough, rebellious, hardened by the road. Walter had stayed behind, hoping time might one day bring him back. Now here he was, standing in the doorway of that same diner. Thomas's eyes landed on the bruise. His jaw clenched. "Who did that?" he asked quietly. Lucy froze. The room went still again. Before she could speak, the diner door opened once more. The thug had returned, laughing with two friends. He stopped when he saw the bikers. Thomas stood slowly. "You the one who hit him?" he asked. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. The thug smirked. "Yeah. You got a problem with that, old man?" Thomas took a step closer. Then another. The other bikers followed, silent but unrelenting. The thug's smirk faltered. Thomas didn't throw a punch. He didn't need to. His voice dropped to a low growl. "That man you hit is my father. He's a veteran who bled for this country while cowards like you hid behind your anger. You think hitting an old man makes you strong?" The thug swallowed hard, the color draining from his face. Thomas leaned in, his words sharp as broken glass. "Go apologize, before I teach you what respect means." The thug stumbled forward, mumbling an apology. Walter simply looked at him, eyes calm, and said, "Son, I forgive you. But next time, pick a fight with someone your own size." That simple grace hit harder than any punch could. The thug fled, his friends following. The door closed behind them, leaving silence in their wake. Thomas turned to his father. Their eyes met, decades of distance collapsing into a single heartbeat. "You didn't have to do that," Walter said softly. "Yes, I did," Thomas replied. "I should have been here a long time ago." Walter chuckled, his voice warm despite the bruise. "Better late than never, son." They sat together, Lucy refilling their coffees. For the first time in years, father and son talked, not about mistakes or regrets, but about memories. About fishing trips, laughter, and the road that had led them back here. The other bikers quietly filled the booths, ordering meals, joking with Lucy, leaving big tips. The diner, once heavy with tension, now buzzed with new life. When the sun began to set, Walter rose slowly from his booth. His son stood with him. The two shared a quiet hug, brief, firm, real. As Thomas and his brothers roared away into the distance, the sound of their motorcycles thundered like a promise through the fading evening, a vow of protection, of respect, of love rediscovered. From that day on, Walter was never alone at his booth again. Every morning, at exactly 8:15, the diner's parking lot filled with gleaming bikes and the smell of strong coffee, and in the quiet of that small-town diner, people learned a lesson that would stay with them forever. That kindness isn't weakness, that silence can be strength, and that even the hardest hearts can find their way home when forgiveness opens the door.